What's in today's podcast? Free will. Or maybe not. What's in a Podcast, episode 005. I once received the advice that posing the question of whether free will exists or not is a great conversation starter. You know, for Thanksgiving and nights out with friends and so on. So I decided to go out on the street and ask you if you thought free will exists. Here's what you had to say.
Yes.
Let's just go with yes.
Free will? It's like people choosing to do things and then doing them? Yeah. I mean, I don't think that... I think some people do things and it's their choice to do them, so...
Free will over ourselves in a way, but we could never free will over someone else. So it's like, I can't be like, oh, I'm going to spend a bunch of money on this, but you can't go up to a guy and be like, you're going to spend a bunch of money on this because you willed it yourself. So the borderline is for yourself and no one else.
We were put on this earth with free will. It's up to you. You have two roads you can go. You can go this way, you can go that way.
Oh, God. I think half and half. I think we can choose to do things like buy a car and, buy a house, but we can't choose to do things like liberate our own people or something like that. Like, we can't choose on bigger topics on how to, help an entire race or help an entire species and stuff like that.
No. It depends on the context you're trying to use free will. You got free will over certain things, so it just depends on how you want to use it.
To the point that it interacts with other people's choices, yes, I would say that we have free will. We are agents unto ourselves. We can choose to act, to react, to not act, up to the point where it starts to take away somebody else's will, to the point where somebody else has to interact with us, because then we might be limited by their choice, or we, as our own agents, are limiting their choice. So I would say, yes, we do have free will insofar as we are acting alone. But when it comes to, interacting with others or potentially choosing the consequences of our actions, I would say, no, we don't.
Yes, no. It's hard to say, really.
Now, I didn't want to put everyone on the spot with follow-up questions, so I treated this more like a survey. But the initial question did garner responses that shed some light on the subject. Most of you answered in the affirmative, saying that free will does in fact exist. Those affirmative responses were often preceded by a thoughtful look, and were followed by clarifying statements or justifications. Answers in the negative, however, seemed to be given with more conviction. That is not to say that anyone's beliefs are stronger than another's, but that was just my observation. I guess it's my turn now. Do I believe free will exists? Yes, I do. As a bit of a side note, before I really get started, I will say, however, that when speaking about free will, there is some difficulty with the language. Particularly, I have a problem with the modifier free. This is because actions do have consequences, and although we might try to skirt those consequences, there is no escaping them. Therefore, I would like to frame my discussion in terms of agency. So here, free will is synonymous with agency. To begin framing this topic, I thought I would start with the alternative, namely, what is there if there is no free will? A universe in which there is no free will is a purely deterministic one. This type of determinism is described in Albert Einstein's famous quote, "God does not play dice with the universe." This quote is often misinterpreted, and my purpose here is not to unpack it, but to use it as an illustration. The play dice part refers to quantum mechanics, something Einstein was not too fond of, though he believed that here, God would also not direct the universe or intervene in any significant way. Rather, that if a God or a creator exists, he would have established his creation, and the current and future state of that creation is what evolved from natural law. So here we are meant to see a universe where underlying laws exist, and all that occurs comes from their statistical probabilities. The dice are rolled, something happens, and on and on. Obviously here, we mortal humans can have no impact, regardless of how aware or conscious we are. Another way to think about a deterministic universe is to speak of it in terms of a machine. An extremely complex machine, but a machine nonetheless. If we were then able to understand the mechanics of that machine, we would know all things that have happened, or will happen for that matter, and why. Here, we humans too can be viewed as machines. Smaller than the universal machine, yes, but extremely complex as well. Cue 3 Days Grace, Halsey, and Powerman 5000.
I am a machine, I never sleep, I keep my eyes wide open. I am a machine, a part of me wishes I could just feel something.
And all the people say, you can't wake up, this is not a dream. You're part of a machine, you are not a human being. We should face so mad up, living on a screen. Low on self-esteem, so you run on gasoline.
Now this is what it's like when worlds collide. Are you ready to go? Got I'm ready to go. What you gonna do? Baby, baby. Are you going with me? 'Cause I'm going with you. That's the end of all time.
You are a robot.
These songs are what came to mind when contemplating this topic. But in retrospect, and after a re-listen, the human machines they describe are more a feeling and not an actuality. 3 Days Grace describes a sort of disassociation. Halsey describes a lack of control. And if Wikipedia is correct, Powerman 5000 is singing about strength. Maybe the reference comes from a place inside that really feels like we are just clockworks. Robot or Not, episode 98, addresses the humans as machine question by asking if humans are, although built out of fleshy bits, in fact robots. I won't spoil their conclusion here, but how would we really know? Caleb from Ex Machina, while trying to answer whether a particular android had developed consciousness, began to question whether he was himself an android. But before I go too far down that rabbit hole, I'll get back on track by saying that, well, within intellectual circles, it appears to me anyway, the idea of there being no free will is self-evident. Because, well, science? And there also appears to be an arrogance with those that may not espouse that belief often being looked down upon. There are some important questions, however, that need to be addressed. Namely, what place does morality have in a deterministic universe? If there is in fact no free will, can we really be held accountable for our actions? What defines justice? Let's listen to the following excerpt from Ben Stein's No Intelligence Allowed.
But it starts by giving up an active deity, then it gives up the hope that there's any life after death. When you give those two up, the rest of it follows fairly easily. You give up the hope that there's an imminent morality. And finally, there's no human free will. If you believe in evolution, you can't hope for there being any free will. There's no hope whatsoever of there being any deep meaning in human life. We live, we die, and we're gone. We're absolutely gone when we die.
Now, I did have to edit the edit here, and I suggest checking out the entire documentary for yourself. But that conversation with Dr. Will Provine had a profound impact on me. And to be honest, it deeply saddened me. And Dr. Provine is not alone, and is maybe not even the most well-known person who espouses those beliefs. Comedian Patton Oswalt is another I can think of, and maybe one you are more likely familiar with. This clip really does answer my questions. If there is no free will, there is no morality. There is, as Dr. Provine said multiple times, no hope. And I want you to ask yourselves what social implications that has. To begin this discussion, I laid all my cards out on the table and said that I do believe there to be free will. I, like those who believe in a deterministic universe, take the law to be a primary. Most other religious people would disagree with me here, as they take God as the primary, meaning that the law comes from God. To this I say that God is, and is underlined here, because of the law. Or to put it another way, the nature of God is such that he knows and follows all law perfectly. These laws being both the physical laws of the universe, gravity, motion, quantum tunneling, etc., as well as the moral laws, unalienable rights, thou shalt not murder, and so on. As I suggested, with the nature of God being tied to these laws, I extend that to all that exists. There is a hierarchy of being determined by consciousness of and adherence to universal law. The square of the period of the Earth's orbit is proportional to the cube of the semi-major axis of said orbit. Yet the Earth knows nothing of its elliptical dance with the sun. A lion, when hungry, will seek out the old, the weak, the young, the maimed in a herd of zebras, but will never question whether it is right for them to eat its unfortunate prey. That lion, too, with no forethought, afterthought, or even malice, will commit patricide. We humans are different than these. We may eat bacon because it is, of course, delicious. But we can wonder if we should eat bacon. Some will say no, whether because of religious convictions or because of a belief that killing animals is wrong. As we grow in our understanding of moral laws, our standard of living increases. We learn how to better interact one with another. We form social structures, build governments. As we grow in our understanding of physical laws, we develop new technologies. We set foot on the moon. And I can reach out to all of you with this podcast. And in this, to me, and hopefully to you, free will or agency can be seen to be self-evident. It is our will, our agency that gives us hope, that gives us purpose, that gives us value. So please choose to join us next time on What's in a Podcast. Decide to invite your friends to listen and be compelled to subscribe, rate, and comment.